Hey everybody, Qroo Paul here from 2Expats Mexico, and welcome to the very first lesson in our new Spanish mini course designed to help students bridge that gap between beginner Spanish and intermediate Spanish. So how do you know if this course is right for you? Because you don't want to waste your time and just jump in there. Well, if you've been learning Spanish on your own via apps or YouTube videos, but you've been kind of stuck, you can do the conjugations, make some simple sentences, even know some of the past tense, the difference between things like ser and estar, but you're just not getting better. The basic lessons start to feel too basic, and things marked intermediate seem way too advanced. If it sounds like I'm describing you, you might want to give this course a try. You see, when people learn Spanish on their own, it's not unusual for them to get stuck right here in this gap. And although students are learning different things at different paces, there tend to be a lot of commonalities on what they're lacking and why they're having trouble making it to the next level. We're going to be talking about all of those things. So after a while, hopefully those intermediate lessons won't seem that advanced anymore. That's enough of the introduction. Let's get into the actual lesson. I've decided to start with a grammatical construction that you can use in a wide variety of circumstances. Ready? Avísame. See that accent's over that I. Avísame. It means literally advise me. It comes from avisar, but it's a good equivalent for like let me know in English. I've lived in Mexico since 2015, and I literally use this particular expression all the time to translate sentences like these. Let me know when you arrive. Let me know when there's one available. Let me know when my order's ready. Let me know when you receive my payment. Let me know when you decide. Let me know when you have time to do it. Let me know when you finish, etc., etc. All of these sentences have something in common. I want to know when something occurs in the future. And that means we're going to have to use a grammatical construction that a lot of beginning and even early intermediate students are just not that familiar with. I'm going to need a lot more space for this one, so let's take it to the stage. All of our sentences are going to start the same way, so let's just begin with that. Avísame cuando. Let me know when something, or advise me when. Let's say you want to translate a sentence like this, let me know when you arrive. This is useful if the delivery guy is going to come by, or if you want to make sure your significant other made it there. Hey, let me know when you get there, when you arrive. That would be avísame cuando llegues. Remember when you pronounce this to really focus on those I's will sound like a hard E, and two L's together sound like a Y. Avísame cuando llegues. Now, some of you may have keyed in that this is llegues and not llegas, because the verb is llegar, to arrive. You're like, why is that not in either the present tense or even the future? What is that? That, my friends, is the subjunctive mood, and it is absolutely the keystone to mastering Spanish. Seriously, this is used all through Spanish, and once you get good at using it, you're going to wonder how you ever lived without it. The funny thing is that most students around between the beginning intermediate level never even think to really go and study it, and that's because we don't use it much in English. But it is definitely what's holding a lot of people back from reaching intermediate level. Where I think a lot of online courses go wrong when they talk about the subjunctive is they teach you every possible circumstance that it could be used, like in one or two lessons, and it just becomes overwhelming. So we're not going to do that. We're going to break it down and show you how to use it just in this construction. So we look at our board here, and we're actually breaking our sentence down into three parts. The let me know part, avísame, cuando, when, and then the last part, that last clause, in this case, llegues. Now, the reason we go with the subjunctive is because we're talking about something in the future. You want to be advised when something happens. It may or may not happen. It'll probably happen, but we're not sure. That's why we use the subjunctive. Here's another one. Let me know when you can go to the beach. So you have to ask yourself, is there a clause that's depending on another clause occurring in the future? If it is, that's going to trigger the subjunctive. Avísame cuando puedas ir a la playa. Puedas is in the subjunctive mood. It comes from the verb poder, which means to be able to, which is a super powerful verb in Spanish. Hopefully you're already using that on a regular basis. Don't worry that you don't know how to conjugate all of these verbs into the subjunctive. I'm going to be teaching you that. I'm just starting with when you need to use the subjunctive. Speaking of the word when, which is cuando, some students think that whenever you use cuando, you're going to use the subjunctive, but we're not always talking about something occurring in the future. Sometimes we're just talking about a habitual action, and in that case, we would just use the regular present tense, which you've probably been using now, called the indicative. Here's an example. I like to go to the beach when my brother visits. Me gusta ir a la playa cuando me visita mi hermano. Compare that last sentence to this one. I plan to go to the beach when my brother visits. Now, the first part of that, I plan to go to the beach, is it when something occurs in the future that may or may not occur? Yes, when my brother visits. So that will trigger the subjunctive. Pienso ir a la playa cuando me visite mi hermano. See, it's visite with an E. That's in the subjunctive mood. Let's take a look at these sentences I showed you just a little while ago. None of these are sentences of fact, like habitual action, so we would use the subjunctive for all of them. Now that you're getting a general idea when to use it in this particular circumstance, let's go into how to conjugate into the subjunctive mood. There are regular and irregular verbs when it comes to conjugation. Regular means that they follow a set pattern that we can teach you. Irregular means that they don't, and you're going to have to memorize them one at a time. In today's lesson, we're only going to be talking about the regular ones. In lesson 2, we'll get into irregular. So, step 1 to conjugating, we take the present tense, first person form of the verb and drop the O. Here's our example. We'll start with poner, which means to put. First person, like I put, is pongo, and we're going to drop that O. Step 2 is to just pop on the appropriate ending, and let's go through those. The endings we choose will depend if we have AR verbs or ER or IR verbs, and that's talking about the letters that the verb ends with. So if you look at these, it almost looks like you swapped them, like the endings for AR verbs became the endings for ER and IR verbs, etc. All right, let's put it all together. Here are 7 verbs I've chosen that we're going to conjugate into the subjunctive mood. So we start with poner, which means to put, super useful verb. Yo ponga, tú pongas, él, ella, usted, the whole third person, ponga. Nosotros pongamos, and ellos, ellas, and ustedes, that's the plural you, pongan. Now, normally I'm not going to write all the yo, tú, el, etc., because we always present conjugations in this order. So if you see something like this in the lesson, you should still know that that first one is I put, the next one is you put, the informal you, etc. After each verb, I decided to pop in a sample sentence that uses the subjunctive, so you'll get used to seeing it. I would recommend that you actually stop the video and practice your pronunciation, sounding these out, really focusing on those vowels. That's really the key to pronunciation. Here's our first one. Avísame cuando pongas las maletas en la cajuela. Let me know when you put the suitcases in the trunk. Now, la cajuela means trunk in Spanish, but it's used in Mexico. If you use it in other countries, they may not have any idea what you're saying. Here's a very common verb, tener, which means to have, conjugated as tenga, tengas, tenga, tengamos, tengan. Here in our sample sentence, we changed a little bit, but we're still talking about something occurring in the future, the first part of the clause. Depending on the second part of the clause occurring, puedo hablar contigo cuando tengas tiempo. Can I talk with you when you have time? It's not a habitual action, so we're still using the subjunctive. Here's our next one, traer, to bring. Traiga, traigas, traiga, traigamos, traigan. It's not uncommon to see the subjunctive mood combined with the future tense, like you see in this particular sentence. Yo quitaré la carne del asador cuando me traigas un plato. I'll take the meat off the grill when you bring me a plate. Here's our next one, ver, to see. Vea, veas, vea, veamos, vean. Avísame cuando veas a María. Advise me when you see Maria. Our next one's going to be a little trickier. It's going to change a little on the conjugation side, so I'll explain that in a moment. Querer, to want. Quiera, quieras, quiera, queramos, quieran. So if the root of the verb in the regular indicative present tense, and again, don't let these grammatical terms scare you, get used to them, changes from E to IE like this one does, it won't change in the nosotros form. It'll be queramos. Here's a sample sentence. Avísame cuando quieras ir a la playa. Me gustaría acompañarte. And a more regular pace. Avísame cuando quieras ir a la playa. Me gustaría acompañarte. Let me know when you want to go to the beach. I'd like to accompany you. Let's move on to poder, which means to be able to. Again, one of the most useful verbs in Spanish. This one's going to work a little bit like querer did. When the root is changing from O to UE, it's not going to change in the nosotros or we form. So we end up with pueda, puedas, pueda, podamos, puedan. In this sample sentence, I'll be using some words that I came up with using the TIO cognate trick. If you haven't watched that video on how to convert about 300 of your English words into Spanish, you should do so. So we have, avísame cuando yo pueda confirmar la reservación. Let me know when I can confirm the reservation. And our last one today is venir, which means to come. Venga, vengas, venga, vengamos, vengan. In this sample sentence, I switched the order around just to show you have some flexibility in Spanish, just like you do in English. Cuando vengas a México, when you come to Mexico, yo seré tu guía turística. I will be your tour guide. I could have flipped that the other way. Yo seré tu guía turística. I will be your tour guide. Cuando vengas a México, when you come to Mexico. I know I said I was only going to do regular verbs today, but I'm just going to throw in one type of construction. It's a little irregular because I used it earlier, and that's to arrive. Llegar. It ends with llegue. It's a UE instead of just adding an E. And the reason Spanish does that is to maintain the sound, because if you have a G before an E or an I, it sounds like an H, so it would become yeje, which would sound too different. So they put that U in to keep it as G sound. So you get llegue, llegues, llegue, lleguemos, lleguen. Another popular verb that follows this pattern is entregar, which means to deliver. If you're ever getting packages or something in Mexico, this is an important one. Entregue, entregues, entregue, entreguemos, entreguen. One of the best ways to practice a language is to use the language. So I encourage you to start coming up with your own sentences during the day and try to look for opportunities where you can use this construction.
Avísame cuando termines de lavar los trastes.
See what I mean? That was a good opportunity to use this construction. So before we end the lesson, let's take a look at the sentence that Linda just said. Avísame cuando termines de lavar los trastes. There may be some vocabulary here you're unfamiliar with, so we'll go through it. Terminar means to finish. Terminar de can mean to finish doing something. So you just plug in the verb. You don't have to conjugate it. Really useful construction. Lavar, to wash, and los trastes, which is a common word in Mexico to mean dishes. Well, that's it for today. This first lesson ran a little long because we had our long intro about what we're going to expect, etc. Most of the lessons after this are going to be a little shorter than this. After each video, you're going to see another video called the practice exercise for that particular lesson. I encourage you to go through that and practice both the construction that we've covered and your pronunciation. If you feel like this was way too easy already, then go ahead and jump to lesson number 2. It's all on you. Until next time, hasta luego.